Welcome back to another Pursuing God's Heart Yourself in the book of Ruth, and this is part 5. And in this video, what I want to focus on is the principle that we need to beware of our assumptions. When we come to the Bible, we can assume we know what's going on. And it could be that we assume we know what's going on because of what we've learned in the past, or it could be that we assume we know what's going on because of the way things work today, both of which could be wrong. And so I'll just give us an example of this in Ruth chapter 3, the first 3 verses. And what we have here, again, remember it's primarily about Naomi. Naomi in chapter 2, God has provided the food, but in chapter 3 the issue is, what about the future for Naomi? What about the family? And so Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her being Ruth, "My daughter, should I not seek rest for you, that it may be well with you? Is not Boaz our relative, with whose young women you were? See, he is winnowing barley tonight at the threshing floor. Wash therefore, and anoint yourself, and put on your cloak, and go down to the threshing floor, but do not make yourself known to the man until he has finished eating and drinking. But when he lies down, observe the place where he lies, then go and uncover his feet and lie down, and he will tell you what to do." Okay, so Naomi's got a plan, and Naomi is working it out. And there's a couple of assumptions, I suppose, that we can come in with at this point. One assumption would be, well, let me think, which way should we do this? One assumption would be kind of the typical Christian assumption. And one of the biggest assumptions that we tend to make is that when we're looking at characters in the Bible, if they are not Jezebel or Judas Iscariot, our assumption is they're probably good, right? We assume that most people are just doing stained glass kind of things in the Bible. But the reality is they were real people with mixed motives, with sinful tendencies and so on. So one approach would be to come to this and say, well, Naomi must be concocting a plan that is profoundly holy and good. Well, look at the details. She's telling Ruth to prepare herself, wash and anoint yourself, put on your clothes. Okay, she's saying kind of be ready, dress up, and then go down to the threshing floor. The threshing floor is where they took the harvest and kind of smashed it to get the chaff off and get the actual treasure from the harvest. And they would have piles of grain, and everybody would celebrate, but they'd also guard their grain. You don't want to have thieves coming in at 3 a.m. and taking your stuff away. So they would spend the night there until they could then go on with their stuff to sell it, their crop, either sell it or store it or whatever. So the threshing floor was kind of a party zone. And so to come with the assumption that Naomi is meaning something, really nice and godly, I think isn't particularly helpful here. Okay, this is a threshing floor. And she's telling Ruth to go down, but wait until he's finished eating, so he's full, and he's finished drinking. And then when he lies down to sleep, notice the place where he lies, uncover his feet and lie down. Now, we can make up some quite holy sounding rituals that probably weren't even in existence in those days for how a woman proposes to a man by taking the cover from his feet and so on. The reality is this is much more like the assumption you might bring to this if you didn't have a sort of Christian Bible background. What would be your assumption if you were thinking in terms of today? Your assumption would be, well, here's a man drinking, here's a young attractive woman that's climbing under the covers. Your assumption would be that this isn't going to go well. And actually, that's probably a more helpful assumption. But don't assume, therefore, that that's what happens. You see, if you're coming into this with a very kind of biblical sort of Christian type of background, you might think, well, it must be holy and it must be good. I'm not convinced. I think this is quite drunk, back of the car, secluded car park kind of a scene. But just because it's that kind of a scene, don't assume that, well, everybody does it, because actually in this passage, they don't. And Ruth and Boaz turn out to be far more godly and far more righteous than Naomi assumes they will be. I think Naomi is assuming that by putting Ruth in this situation, it's going to sort of force things along. And then Boaz, being a good guy, after things progress, he'll have to take care of her. That seems to be Naomi's plan. Turns out that Ruth and Boaz are far more righteous, and impressively so. There you go. Just a maybe familiar passage, but sometimes our assumptions can sort of lead us astray one way or the other. Keep reading the book of Ruth and enjoy it. There's a wonderful story unfolding here.